President Obama campaigning across the country, touting tax fairness and his Buffett rule. And yet, his tax return out today showing anything but. Turns out President Obama's 20% effective tax rate in 2011 is actually lower than many Americans who earn less than he did, including his secretary. Time to bring out our panel. Hadley Heath is a senior policy analyst for the Independent Women's Forum in D.C. Ryan Fraser is the managing director for Fraser Global Strategies in Denver. And Remy Spencer is an attorney. Hadley, I'm going to start with you. Oh, this whole notion of fair tax is just getting so old, isn't it?
It is, and you know, President Obama didn't make the $1 million mark. His proposed version of the so-called Buffett rule would only affect people who made over $1 million in earnings each year. So he's found a way out of it himself. I'm more concerned with how President Obama proposes that we balance the national budget or how we cut spending, because honestly, I don't think that revenues are the problem at this point. It's still a problem with spending.
The thing is, Ryan, though, this is going to come, you know, everyone's going to be talking about how Mitt Romney's effective tax rate is much lower. They're going to leave out the part that he donated $7 million over the last 2 years, which actually is more than the taxes he paid.
Right. You know, with an effective tax rate of 20%, he's paying a lower tax rate than many people who make even less, and much lower than the 30% he proposes in his Buffett rule. You know, what I find to be interesting and rather inconsistent is that this doesn't play well into his argument of for a fair tax rate system. In fact, it seems like the president isn't leading by example in this particular case.
Remy, what do we do with our tax system?
I think our tax system should be simplified. I think it is so complicated, and it allows for so many creative loopholes, if you will. I think consistency, transparency, and maybe even a flat tax. I don't see how this structure right now is fair to anyone. And when our president's policies are inconsistent with his own tax returns, I think there's a real problem.
Yeah, junk the book. That's what I say. Junk the tax code and start over. All right, well, more than 2,700 of America's largest companies are getting states' approval to actually keep their state income taxes collected from their employees. Now, these are companies ranging from General Electric, Goldman Sachs, Procter & Gamble, Ford, GM, and the list goes on. And they're not even required to tell their employees. Ryan, this is nuts.
Yeah, you know, under the guise of economic development, this is bad tax policy to allow companies to keep money that from their employees that has been called a tax without them even knowing. It seems to me that at a minimum, public disclosure and employee notification that they're doing this should be required.
It's interesting, though, Remy, because, you know, states are trying to bring businesses in, so they're giving companies these tax breaks. Meanwhile, these states are totally broke. They could actually use the money.
Absolutely. You're 100% correct. I'm all for incentives to bring big industry into a particular state. But when they're letting them hold on to the tax withholdings that the state needs and the employees think is going to their state, there's a real problem. If a small business like my law firm withholds taxes from our employees' paychecks and then doesn't turn them over to the federal or state governments, we could go to prison for that.
Right.
And to think that these employees don't know where their money is going is problematic, and I think it should be transparent.
Remy makes a good point, though. I mean, that's pretty public, Hadley, that, you know, these companies are getting tax breaks. You got to believe eventually there's going to be some employee uproar.
Oh, absolutely. If I were an employee and I was having taxes withheld in each paycheck and I found out that they weren't actually being paid to my state government, but instead my employer was keeping them, I'd be furious. So I think this is tax season. Listen, a lot of Americans can relate to this story because we're all sitting down with these forms. We're trying to figure out how to comply with the tax code, and it's just too complex. I think you're right. We need tax reform. Just dump the whole thing and start over.
We need tax reform, and we need to stop the ridiculous spending, like, for instance, the government dropping over $205,000 of your taxpayer dollars to, quote, translocate a shrub. Now, apparently, this bush that you can purchase just about anywhere for as little as 15 bucks was standing in the way of one of President Obama's shovel-ready highway projects. So they spent our hard-earned cash moving this fine little bush to a secret location. Now, I do not have a green thumb, Remy. I would have probably run the thing right over, but apparently it's some sort of rare something. I mean, really? Must we move this thing?
If it needs to be moved, why does it need to cost $200,000? I've moved shrubs in my backyard myself with the help of a gardener. I don't understand the cost. But how can they call it so precious and extinct if you can go to your local gardening store and buy one of these things? It makes no sense.
Ryan, but that's the thing. I mean, this is the first of many. You know, next week we get the pork report that comes out, and we get to hear more about this ridiculous government spending. It's not stopping.
This could be but the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
I think you put it in the right perspective at the outset of this conversation. That is $205,000 for something they could have bought brand new for $16. Let's think about that. Now, here's the thing that I still have a question, and that is, how does this particular plant benefit the public?
Silence, because
No
I have
one seems to know.
nothing. Hadley, I'll turn to you on that. Again, I don't have a green thumb, so the plants don't benefit me anyway at all.
Oh, absolutely. $200,000 is a ton of money, but it's an even sadder story when you consider it in light of the fact that so many Americans are struggling right now.
Right.
There's scarce resources all around at local, state, and federal budgets and in household budgets. So many families. I mean, can you imagine how $200,000 could really benefit someone? And for the life of one plant, that doesn't seem like it should be a national priority.
Yeah, I really hope that is in our little pork report that comes out on April 17th. That'll be interesting. All right, I love this story. So, thanks to our growing fascination with Hollywood and reality TV, the prom is becoming the new wedding. In fact, families are expected to drop over $1,000 on the prom this year. This is actually up from $807 last year. Now, Hadley, I'm tossing this to you, but I have to tell you, I am a prom lover. I've gone to lots of them. I think they're so fun. I'm not embarrassed to say that. But $1,000 on the prom, I think, might be Looney Tunes.
Right. I mean, prom is a good time. It's a great memory for a lot of Americans. It is sort of a coming-of-age experience. But this survey of households that were sending kids to the prom, actually the lowest income bracket from $20,000 to $30,000, those families were spending double the national average on prom, so about $2,600 per household. And it really struck me that this lowest income bracket was spending the most on prom. It just doesn't seem like the best investment long term.
Yeah, but, you know, Remy, you need nails, hair, you probably need a car, you know.
Nuts. That's nuts. That is nuts. I was just telling someone this story back in the green room that my mom gave me a budget when I was going to my senior prom, and we were fortunately financially secure, and my father was a good earner, but she gave me a budget. And I found a friend who had actually worn a different dress, and I borrowed it from her, and I bought a nice pair of shoes, and it was a fraction of what these kids are spending now. I don't understand why they need $800–900 dresses. They're not going to the Oscars. It's not their wedding day.
I know.
And you can find a dress for a couple $100.
And yet, you know what's interesting, Ryan, is that I surveyed the guys here, and half of them didn't even go. So I'm not sure who these girls are going with when they spend $800 to $1,000 on their prom dresses.
Yeah, me either. I have to say, though, you know, especially for seniors, this is a big day. So if parents want to spend more money to make it special, then so be it. I just hope that parents, and actually want to encourage parents, to use this as an opportunity to make them earn the stuff. Put them to work at home. Let them work on the weekends at your small business. But don't just give it to them. Make them earn it.
There you go. Maybe we shouldn't wear hot pink or gold lame either.
I don't think.
That's just speaking from experience. Hadley, Ryan, Remy, thank you so much.
Thank you.